Hey Executives, thanks again for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, my name is Riley and I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Nate Cole. Nate Cole is a former Jehovah's Witness who started waking up around 2018, spent 3 years as a PMO, physically in, mentally out, and then finally left the organization in August of 2020, and he'd like to share his story with us. Hi Nate, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm happy to be here on ExJW. I've enjoyed this channel for a while, and when I was during the peak season of COVID, I was in Amazon warehouse doing packages and moving deliveries, and during that job helped me get the money I need to get out, get my own place. And now during that time, I was listening to your videos, and it helped me a lot. And since I've left and gotten out in the organization, I've gotten a better job now. I've been doing even more for my life than before, and it's been going well. And thank you for your channel.
Thank you for watching, and thank you very much for joining me as well. I do appreciate it. So what was it like being PMO for 3 whole years, and how did you start waking up in the first place?
So I want to get started off on the whole 3 year number. I know it sounds weird. That was it was like roughly around 3 years, and the reason why it was that amount of time was because it was a process of um, it was it was confliction at first, because you have people who are in the organization that you care about, and you know you won't see them again. My family, I lived my whole life just trying to make my parents happy, and because they just, I don't know, they had this thing where they had this expectation of me, and I feel like they would be happy once I hit that expectation. So, for example, if you are a witness watching this, then you probably have witness parents who are expecting you to be baptized one day or be a pioneer, or maybe they wanted you to be a ministerial servant. And I kind of wanted to hit those titles and make them happy, but every time I would do something, an achievement for the organization, I would feel happy, but at the end of the day, it was like my parents weren't truly satisfied. At the same time, there was just an emptiness, because this was a man-made title I just achieved. Like, if you look in the Bible, half the titles aren't even there. Like, what I'm achieving a man-made title right now. Like, this is literally made up. Like, I can't believe I'm excited. Yes, yes. I didn't become a ministerial servant, but can you imagine jumping up and down? Yes, I'm a ministerial servant now. And you look in the Bible, the word's not even there. They just made it up. I was like, what am I doing? Like, it's crazy. But as I was a PMO, I would look around, and it's the craziest thing to be waking up and sitting in a chair in an audience, and you're looking around, and you notice you're the only person looking around. Everyone's just looking forward in the meeting, just paying attention, and it's like the husbands, they don't even have their arms around their wives. It's just very just cold. It's this stare, and I'm just looking around, and I'm like, these people are just so I don't know, laser on focus. It's like I'm the only person conscious right now looking around.
Yeah, I totally understand that experience. I've been there. I mean, about a year before I left the organization, I was only at the meetings in body. My mind wasn't there at all. I hadn't woken up yet. I wouldn't describe myself as being PMO at that time, but I was completely uninterested in what was going on. I just completely zoned out every single meeting, and I would sit there daydreaming or browsing social media on my phone, or or just looking around at people. And I saw the same thing that you saw. People just transfixed, and just really passively consuming what was coming from the platform. And so I totally understand where you're coming from on that one.
Thank you. It feels nice to have someone understand where I'm coming from, especially the part where you're sitting down and you feel not really there. It's just everyone's gonna give a yes response when they get their microphone. It's what's gonna happen in the comments and everything. In fact, it's kind of like, I'm not sure if you've seen the Truman Show. It's a movie about, I guess, a
Yes,
Jim
I
Carrey.
have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I
starts
really like
saying,
it.
and I'm like, I feel like I could walk into the meeting and say, okay, 3 minutes from now, Brother Brown's going to give a comment on why we should love Jehovah, and then after that, that sister's over there, so and so is going to give a comment, and it's just like everything was so repetitive and new magazine cover, same information recycled, but then all of a sudden, new light information changes, and then no one disagrees, everyone says yes. Information change, no one disagrees, everyone says yes, and I'm like, wow, this is like so many changes, and not once, like, I don't know, it's just, it's crazy to me. Like, these are people making these changes, but it's interesting. It always made me think about all that.
So while you were waking up, I mean, was there any one singular thing that started the ball rolling?
I think the biggest thing, the main thing that made me wake up was I had a circuit overseer visit, and I went into the back room, in the elders room, and he was doing, before his talk, a line of coke before the talk. I'm joking. I'm joking. He wasn't doing. No. After that, I was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. No, he was like, no, we did have a circuit overseer though, who I dearly love. He was always like on the edge, like super energetic. But no, that never happened. I'm just joking. No, the biggest thing that got me was seeing cases of people's like really bad trauma, really bad abuse go completely unanswered. And I'm just like, what is going on right now? And especially, like, I'm not like an activist by any means of like if you're a man or a woman. I'm just like about equality and being treated equal. And if a woman goes to an elder about abuse, which was like people within my own family, and I had to sit there in the meetings and watch as the elder just sits down with like a notebook like this, and he will just ask, okay, so, and brother, and he'll refer back to the brother, ask the brother another question, while the sister just sits there and she has to listen to this. And since I guess in their sense, they take the scripture of the woman being the weaker vessel. They're like, okay, we're just going to talk to the brother about this and see what he says. And like the woman of importance in my family and I'm like, I watched how they would not even be heard in these meetings, not even be listened to. And the last meeting that happened, I literally just stood up and I walked out. And it was like, it was on impulse, but it was the right thing to do because I'm not about to sit here in a abuse meeting and listen to only one person get questioned while the abused just sits there. And it was like they had the abuser, and they'll ask the abuser questions like, "Did such and such happen?" And that abuser can say, "No, it did." Okay, did such and such happen? And they'll go over it while the abuser is just sitting there like they can disagree and everything, but you have two different stories, and now the elders can't do anything. And now it's like, and this has happened time and time again with friends, family, and it sucks. Like, this is 100% a man-made organization, and it's not guided by God. The way they talk, that if you can just say that, you can get away with so much. Oh yeah, well, we're guided by God. God told us, and it's just rough.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I haven't had any kind of experience with abuse directly, but I totally get your point about seeing and realizing that this is a man-made organization, because that was one of the first things that started waking me up, is realizing that the elders are not guided by Holy Spirit. I mean, in my own experience, I started seeing things, and the way that, from dealings that I had with the elders, that was a question that was going on in my mind over and over and over and over again. And I just couldn't reconcile it. I couldn't reconcile what I was seeing and experiencing with the belief that I'd been taught that elders are appointed by Holy Spirit. I just could, and guided by Holy Spirit. I just couldn't reconcile those two things. It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's so true. I was just smiling because I'm like, I'm thinking that that's such a good point. I'm thinking about if you think back to the elders you knew back then and looking back now, I mean, it's the funniest thing in the world. Like, brother so and so was guided by Holy Spirit, and I'm like, oh my, I believe that. Like, this dude was out here just like living his life or doing this or doing that. And the other guy's guided by Holy Spirit. It's like I'm just like, there's no way. And even if whether people believe if Holy Spirit is real or not, at the end of the day, what the elders do is just it comes from another tier above them, like circuit overseer. And where is that in the Bible? So I think we're at a dead end now, where whether anyone believes in the Bible or does or doesn't, it's just like at the end of the day, it's not in there. If you believe in the Bible, either way, it doesn't matter because these are man-made titles. And I feel like they took one word from the Bible, like elder, and then added a whole bunch of authorities above elder, and now they have their own system. And it's just at the end of the day, I think one question I think me and you could both answer is like hopefully is the watchtower and the term cult, because one thing that JW say is, and they say this with sincerity, like how can we be a cult? Like they're genuinely asking, how can we be a cult? How is this possible? And they're trying, and I feel for them because in their mind they're fighting a battle, and they're like, no, am I in a cult? There's no way it could be. So like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on like the organization being like a cult, like that witnesses were watching, like I don't know, you've already do these videos like this, but as of right now, like what's a thing that kind of makes the Watchtower organization like a cult?
The level of control, the level of control, the narcissistic attitude of the leadership as well. You know, one classic trait of narcissists is not accepting responsibility for their mistakes, and the Watchtower organization isn't expert at that. They don't accept responsibility for anything at all, nothing whatsoever. It's always the fault of the membership, is never the fault of the leadership. If ever there's a problem in the organization, well, it's not a problem with the organization, it's a problem with you and the way you're viewing the organization. You know, that's how it is all the time. I mean, apart from that, from a more academic point of view, there's the BITE model, which was being developed by Stephen Hassan, who himself is an ex-cult member, and it's an extremely comprehensive framework for assessing where an organization, whether it's religious or not, lies on that spectrum of undue influence, you know. And that was one of the first books that I read after waking up, and it completely blew my mind. Completely blew my mind. And what also blew my mind was how similar witness practices are to the cult that the author was in, the Unification Church, commonly known as the Moonies. So many similarities between them, and I just could not believe what I was hearing. I was literally listening to the audiobook and jumping up and down, just couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just so many similarities. And I thought that even though I'd woken up and I no longer believed it was the truth, I thought that the witness religion was so unique. I had no idea that it's just the same as all these other cults and high control group. They're all the same. They all work off the same blueprint, you know. And yeah, so that's my thoughts on whether or not the witnesses are a cult. So when you were waking up and you obviously came to a point where you decided that you were going to leave, can you just talk us through that? What was that like, coming to that decision, and how did you make that decision?
I just want to say what you said there was really powerful. That was, yeah, definitely. You see things from a very from a point of view that needs to be heard more, and that's why I had to ask, just because I like the way you explain things. I love it, man. As a fan, I had to ask. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, ask the question again.
So when you were waking up, you eventually came to the decision to leave the organization. What was that thought process like? How did you come to that decision?
Well, after spending some time there, the first dilemma was, okay, I don't want to leave the organization, and man, I've been doing this for a while because I was living with my parents, and I was like, I can't leave the organization while living with family, you know, and it's just not going to work because I'll be physically and mentally out while living with my parents who are very like, you know, my father being, he was for 13 years, he was an elder, my mother pioneered, and it was just like there was through and through a witness, and I just could not live in a household with them being out all the way, and I had to get out. So that was when I worked really hard. I used that money to get my own place, and once I got my own place, I did a year of openly breaking one of the rules I hated the most. I'm like, screw you guys, I'm breaking this rule right in front of you guys. And that was the rule of like, they had this rule where it was just like, oh, we shouldn't hang out with so and so or so and so. And it was like people who were studies. Like, oh, we want them to come in first before we start inviting them to gatherings, or we want them to, um, we want to know if they truly believe this is the truth before we start inviting them. And not even just that, just like these cliches in the hall. Like, I remember like different side of the halls would have people that sat there at the same time, and they'd be in their own little group, and then they would always hang out with each other and get lunch after the meetings, never invite anyone else. You have a guy, let's just say a guy named Johnny walks in the Kingdom Hall, and he attends one meeting, two meetings, three meetings, never gets invited to anything. He's there to find truth. You know, everyone's trying to find truth in life, but he's watching as everyone else associates, and what happens to him. I saw um, a dear friend of mine, Gregory. He came into the Kingdom Hall I was in, and he showed up. He never gotten really invited to anything, and then he left. And you know, I invited him to my place, and then someone when I invited him to my place, he said, "Thank you so much, Nathaniel. Like I was wondering why, like what was going on with the association here." And an elder came to me and was like, "Hey, you ever seen Gregory around?" And I'm like, "He left. He stopped coming to the meetings a month ago." Like, and that kind of stung me. And I told him, I said, "Look, you guys haven't done anything with him. In fact, I had a Bible study that I brought to the Kingdom Hall, and they wouldn't even associate with him. They wouldn't even want to do a study with him because, and as dumb as it sounds dumb just saying this, but it's coming straight from the governing body. Like he's a tall, like skinny Jamaican guy, and he came in, you know, a great friend of mine, and we go in there because I was studying with him, and hey, because I was bringing in studies to the Kingdom Hall. He comes to the Kingdom Hall, and he doesn't have a lot of suits. He wears one suit, I guess, that doesn't um like appease. It was too tight, I guess. And I had an elder pull me to the side and say, "Hey, is that Bible study on the fence? Is he on the fence? Because I noticed his suit's a bit tight." And I'm like, "Where's the fence? Which fence are we talking about?" And he said, "You know, he's like, I'm a bit older, so maybe I see things different, but that's definitely gay." And I'm just like, you know, I should be getting angry right now, but I'm not responding to him. I'm responding to Anthony Morris. That's who really said that. That wasn't him. That was Anthony Morris who put that in his head. And Anthony Morris came out with that. And not a single elder, not a single. I've asked with my Bible study next to me after the meeting was over. I went to the elders. I said, "Hey, my name's Nate. Here's my Bible study." And we did this meeting after meeting, and they wouldn't study with him. And I was doing it by myself. And I'm like, wow, I love truth way more than anyone else in here, apparently, because this is ridiculous. Like, if you truly, and it's what's crazy is if you truly believe Jehovah is real, which I don't believe right now in a God named Jehovah. I believe in their creator right now, and I'm still on the fence about that. But the term named Jehovah, that's a different story. But long story short, whether you believe in Jehovah or not, wouldn't you want your religion or organization to not blaspheme his name? Because I thought this was all about love. I thought this was about, you know, Jesus spoke to everyone, no matter who they are. And that's what I just don't think what Jehovah's Witnesses can't be like. They call themselves Christians. They don't really follow the example of Christ because Jesus spoke to everyone. Um, and, you know, and that's something I talk about on my TikTok because it's just like, I understand people who are theists or atheists because in my mind, both sides are right. It's weird. I live in a weird world, man. Both sides are right to me. And yeah, it's just it's crazy. I can't believe how many times I brought my Bible study and I did study with him, and it wasn't even just him. I had a second Bible study that happened too. So it not exactly how it happened, but just I would bring him in and he wouldn't be invited to certain things and all that. It was just weird how this was like it seemed like a high school I was walking into. Like it wasn't even what they called it.
Yeah, that's a common thing, you know, cliques in the congregation and soft shunning and, you know, like a really elitist attitude. And when you think about it, I think that kind of attitude is actually built into the religion, because at its core, the Jehovah's Witnesses religion is really a supremacist religion. You know, you're taught to look down on anyone else outside of the organization. I mean, it's not framed that way, but if we're being honest, that is what witnesses do. You know, you look down on worldly people, you look down on other religious groups, particularly the Catholics. You know, you're taught to believe that, you know, you're better than them. So it's unsurprising if that kind of elitist, supremacist attitude overlaps into other areas.
That is so hilarious because like you tell a Jehovah's Witness something about abuse or child abuse, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, look over there, the Catholics, look at them, they're doing child abuse. You got to stop them." And I'm like, "It's too late. Australia Royal Commissions, it's too late." Jeffrey Jackson was literally out there just like expose all of it. I'm just like, so many cases have been coming up, and it's just like, I just want to touch on that real quick because you mentioned a great point. Because it's amazing how they'll finger point to other people and say, "Oh yeah, well look at them, look at them." And another thing I want to mention earlier that you said an excellent point about the organization not taking responsibility. And this is a genuine question for Jehovah's Witnesses and people who are in and out. When was the last time the governing body said sorry about anything or apologized about anything?
They never have, as far as I can tell or remember. They never have. I mean, even when they print corrections, they word it in such a way that it doesn't sound like they're making an admission. You know. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So when you actually left, talk us through that whole situation. How did you do it? How did you break it to your parents? And what happened to you?
It was really, it was not smart of me, and it was, I guess, in a sense, can be arrogant. But what I did was, after so long of sitting in the Kingdom Hall with this notebook I had and just writing questions, which I still have to this day, none of those questions got answered. I had it all there, and I was the only person with a notebook in the hall writing all this down. And after so much time has gone by, I was advised by someone, maybe you should go. Hey, it seems like you have a lot of questions in your mind. Maybe you should go to the elders and ask those questions. And I'm on my way out because the truth was, it was taking a toll on me that I had all these questions and no answers. But what I did wrong was I went to the elders and I was like, I questioned them, and because I set a meeting aside of them. I started out by saying, "Hey, I need help." I called them, and I called them, and I said, "Hey, elder so and so, I need some help spiritually." And I guess I was like to them a wounded sheep that they were going to come in and rescue and everything. And but I go into the meeting. One thing that stood out to me, I just now that I'm mentally out, I know in. I'm like, why does that guy have a notebook and paper, and why does that guy have a tablet or a laptop? And I'm like, I never questioned this before. Like they're literally illegally recording me or writing out my information without my permission. But in that case, I decided I would record the information for myself because I went back to the bathroom before the meeting started, and I said, "God, if these are your people, tell me right now, because we're here in your house. If because according to JW superstitions, Satan can't be there, so I guess it'd have to be God." But I just got this cold shiver down my spine, And I think that was just my natural instincts to just like get out of there. I continued the meeting. I sat down, I continued it, and I just asked some questions from like one that is like politics in the congregation, and like how in this hall right now there's an elder with a beard. 15 minutes down the road, that's not allowed. 15 minutes. If the doctrine of a religion changes within 15 minutes of a drive, what the hell is that? Like that's just crazy. Like all I have to do is just pick the congregation that's best for me, and then I never have to. And it's just that's what people do. But like, I asked all these questions, and at the end of the meeting, the elders stated, "Hey, we appreciate your concerns." And when the meeting started, they said, "Hey, we're here for you. You're a brother. We love you, care for you. We're going to make sure we do this under prayer. We're going to answer all your questions." And what really stung more is just they came to the end of the meeting and said, "Thank you so much for your questions, your concern, and we're going to reconvene this meeting." They never answered the questions. And what was the crazy part was is they even told me, "Hey, yeah, we're going to even we'll call you after the meeting. We'll get back to you with those questions." But my mind was already made up. I knew they weren't going to. Till this day, the elders have never contacted me again. And at the same time, I think that was even more proof that this was just BS, because it was just like, you guys promised, if Jehovah's name meant anything, you guys used his name. You guys promised in your prayer in his house that you would answer my questions. You'd answer a single one. And it wasn't even like a thing like, "Oh, well, that wasn't the answer I wanted to hear." Like they legitimately just said, "Okay, all right," and then they kept going. But yeah, so that was what happened, and after that happened, I immediately moved out of the state, and yeah, and I just wanted to mention one other thing that you mentioned earlier that I really enjoyed, how the organization views people who aren't in it. I hate to sidetrack, but before I forget, it really sucked growing up, and this is also part of my leaving, that it's just not in me to just hate people just to hate them just because they're not a part of my group. And yes, I use that word hate because I'm like, um, the way the organization talks about these people is just insane. The leadership as well. So I just couldn't do it anymore. I was just tired. Like, it's exhausting to just think that you're above everyone else all the time, and for what?
I totally understand. I mean, if I'm honest, the view that the organization has of worldly people, it bothered me a little bit while I was a witness, because I did have some good friends that, people that I'd worked with over the years, that I maintained a friendship with to a degree that wasn't, that was frowned upon in the organization. But by and large, the view of worldly people isn't something that I wrestled with, you know, um, just by virtue of being indoctrinated. As I started waking up, it became, a bigger and bigger issue for me. But while I was in the organization, being indoctrinated, I, for the most part, kind of agreed with the organization stance with outsiders. But I look back on that now and think to myself, how could I ever have, gone along with this mentally? Especially what I've come to learn now, after making friends in, the world, and seeing how, basically, I've come to realize that the organization doesn't have the monopoly on good people, and the world doesn't have the monopoly on bad people. There are good people and there are bad people, and there's lots of overlap regardless of what group you're in, or where you come from, what country. Some people are good and some people are bad, and that's all there is to it. And that's such a simple truth, but it's a simple truth that is hidden from Jehovah's Witnesses, which is absolutely crazy, myself included when I was one. But I'm grateful that I know better now. When you know better, you do better, right? So
That's the spirit. And one of the things that to piggyback off the like people who are quote unquote non-witness, worldly, or whatever. It's funny, they try to stop that term. I'm not sure if they try to stop it globally, but in where I lived at, they said, hey, we shouldn't use that term worldly anymore. That lasted for like a month. Like, they went right back to using that word, and it was like that just showed me just how much these people just don't care. Like, the witnesses will stand up against that, but when it comes to anything else, it was just like it's crazy to think the only thing that witnesses stood up against was the term worldly. Like, yes, we want to use it. Like, that was just in my area, but we had that one pioneer sitting in the car with us. Hey guys, society says we shouldn't use the term worldly anymore. We should use non-witness. And they all looked at her and just started laughing. I'm like, damn, y'all are just cruel. But it going to school and besides not being able to participate in, because as a witness, we're over here. It's like you cannot partake in any kind of school, no basketball, no football, no soccer, no nothing. Imagine being born and you could be Ronaldo. You don't. Of course, that's like it's literally a slim chance, but like you could be a great basketball player and anything, and you'll never know that thing about you because you can't do it at school. And it could make you happy, but you don't do it. And a lot of people are robbed of their childhood joys because, like, that's what a cult does. Is you can't do that. Sorry, you can't partake in sports, like, or the chess club after school. Who knows? But just like because it's worldly association. The funny thing about the worldly association is when I was going to the guidance counselor, and over here in the high school I went to, there was this thing called community service. Well, the rest of the worldly people were turning in their time for community service, for taking trash off the road, feeding the homeless, doing things like that. I was like, hey, look, I got my community service. I did field service. I was knocking on doors, and I like, I'm like, what? Like, what are you even? How are you even helping anyone? Like, okay, you told them the world was gonna end. Like, we're living the last days, and that was was a couple of years ago. And what was so funny was, like the elders would tell me, they're like, hey, yeah, for community service, just go ahead and tell them you did field service and how you help people. And I'm just like, wow, like maybe I have this backwards because if how can worldly people all be evil if they're out here taking trash off the road, feeding the homeless? Like, not every worldly person does that, but for community service, like I actually saw them in groups do that, and man, in my mind, there's like this, and this is I guess have to do with my title and like my username, but it was just like there's this chain holding everyone back, and it has to be broken, and it is breaking. A lot of people are like doomers and saying, no, the world's going to end in and out of their religion. But people of all backgrounds, people of all walks of life are making it to positions of success and making it to these spots in life where they have platforms. And before, it wasn't happening. And now you have all these older people and people such as the governing bodies who are in control of these organizations, and they don't want it to happen. They're pulling on the chain as hard as they can. It's like a tug of war, and they don't want the world to change because their ego cannot take the fact that their worldview is not correct and it's completely tainted. So once that chain is broken, and it is over time, like I believe that things will get better in this world, and that's just not because witnesses always said, oh, look at the world. It's going to end. It's horrible. This world is horrible. And I just don't think that's the case. I don't think that everything is doom and gloom because that's just how the witnesses thought. And the witnesses often said, they're like, hey, this world's going to end anyway soon. So it is what it is. And I'm just like, no, I don't think that way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if the world is so bad, if the world is bad and it's getting progressively worse, then it means that in the past is better than it is now. Ask any Jehovah's Witness what time period they'd prefer to live in, now or the 16th, 17th, or 18th century. How many of them will say that they'd prefer to live back then?
it's crazy because sometimes it's like an excitement for some witnesses. They're like, oh, look, there's bad things happening. This is it. This is the time. It's about to happen. And that bothered me growing up because I'm just like, I looked at them and I'm like, because you grew up with the Revelation book. I mean the grand climax that all the witnesses are waiting for never happening. Maybe that's why a lot of them are so mad all the time. I'm just kidding. No. So it's like you see all these images in the Revelation book of the world being destroyed and people dying, and then the demonstrations by the broadcasting saying, "Oh, this is you. If you don't join, this is you in the end of the world." When Anthony Morris says, "Oh, I know what's coming in the future. I know what's coming in Armageddon. A whole lot of dead people," and then he's like, "Hot dogs on a grill," and I'm like, "This is terrible." And I thought about it, and I'm like, this is like romanticized or fantasized on, because it's brought up again and again and again, and more publications coming out over and over.
It really is disgusting, the rhetoric that comes from Tony Morris. It's terrible. I think he actually has deep psychological problems, So after you left, what was the situation with your family? So you physically moved out, got your own place. Did your family still keep in contact with you, or are they shunning you?
My family shunned me. I don't know. I don't know what else to expect from I don't know. I don't know. I get my hopes up. It sucks, but I thought that they would be considerate and want to hear my side of the story. I went down there and I drove down there to see my sister, and this was like 4 or 5 months ago. And I went down there, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm just here to see my sister." And like, my dad pulled up in the car, said, "You need to leave." And I'm like, "I don't even want to talk about religion. I just want to know how she's okay because she, without giving too much away, she went through a lot, you know, in the organization. It was bad because she was in a congregation that was like they were like bullies, and they would bully her a lot just because, well, one, like she's tall and she's beautiful. She has like red hair and like tall, like flowing red hair, and she's gorgeous. But that was like a lamplight to like all these other girls who would bully her and everything. And and also as a woman, she just felt like she had no value. Like as a woman, like you watch all these men get titles and achieve all these positions at one after another, and then you're just kind of there at the meetings. Like you can't really do much. You're just there. And like I even heard one brother like I don't know. I gotta stop saying brother. I gotta cut that out. I'm sorry. That's how long I've been a witness. No, but there was this one Jehovah's Witness when I was in the organization who was like, "Yeah, we need more sisters. We need to date more often so we can increase our numbers as witnesses." And I'm like, Do you hear yourself? Like, do you hear yourself? Because they were saying that once the word is preached all over the world, then the end will come. So they're like, "Yeah, we need more sisters to have kids so we can." And I'm just like, that's not like a teaching. I'm not saying it's a teaching. I'm just saying that's just that came from that brother who was in a particular position in the congregation. But in a sense, like he was right in JW terms, because in JW terms they have to preach the word throughout the whole planet, and then the end will come, and they want it to come so fast. And it was just crazy. My family, they don't talk to me, they don't get in touch with me, and I've tried to get in contact with him. I said, "Look, I'm here. I have open arms. I love you guys. And when you guys want to, please come back and like you guys say hi to me, whatever, talk to me. We don't have to sit and talk about religion." And they won't do it. They won't budge, and it sucks because it's like I literally have no family. I have like I have a cousin. He's out there in Texas. I love him to death. But like I'm just now talking to him. Like, hey, like where have I been for the past 20 years? Because I wasn't allowed to talk to him. My family wouldn't allow me to talk to my other family. So now it's weird. You know, it's awkward because now I have one cousin, and I have two. I have a second cousin, and I just can't. It's weird reestablishing connection with them because I just couldn't have it before because they weren't witnesses and I knew nothing about them at all. So um, it's kind of hard to explain to them why I didn't talk to them and why my family never reached out. But they're understanding, and we're talking more and more, and things are getting better.
I'm really pleased to hear that your non-witness family are understanding and taking taking steps to rebuild a relationship with you. I know from personal experience that that does really, really help a lot. Because I reconnected with a lot of my non-witness family, and they've all been absolutely brilliant. They've all been so great, so understanding and kind and hospitable and loving, just the way families should be. If you take the Jehovah's Witness doctrine out of the equation, that's what family should be like. So I'm really pleased to hear that. So how do you feel with everything now? You've been out since August last year. Do you feel like your life is moving forward in a positive direction?
Definitely. At first, it was hard. It was. I just felt like I was in the middle of the ocean with no life raft around me. I'm just looking around, and I'm just like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like, I just felt like I was in cold waters in the middle of nowhere. You know, like if I was like, if I could describe it, it would be like being on a planet that's made of water and there's nowhere to swim to. And it was just, I had no family. I had all my friends were gone, and of course, it was just like I knew this would happen, but the way it happened was just. It was just the way the elders did it was just so dirty too, because it was just like they they told me that I could affect the rest of the congregation, and it's just like that. It seems like I have been communicating with apostates, and I was just a danger, a threat to the flock, and that's how it's described in the Shepherding the God's Flock book. It talks about if someone's a threat to the congregation and so on and so forth. People can find that book and read it, but it's just it sucks because um, I knew the elders were like kind of uncaring, but they took it to a whole new level. They were actually worse than I thought, and I knew it was bad, but not that bad. But I got out. I moved, and the second I moved, it helped so much because I moved to a new area. I moved to North Carolina, and I love it here. Everyone here is just kind of like there's so many people here. It's like modern, and a lot of that way of thinking isn't here. And it also helps me to see how outdated some of these point of views are from witnesses. So moving was a great help. Um, Making friends at work and getting a part of groups that play basketball or any kind of like sport, that was great. It was a huge help. Yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I thought that being indoctrinated for so long, I was expecting witnesses to be like, those corny pictures that were on like young people last book, and like a worldly person was like winning around with a cigarette in their hand, just waiting for you to come over so they can like put it in your mouth and convert you. Like it was just so dramatic. Like, oh my god, please! Like I cannot believe how over the top dramatic like they viewed worldly people. And these are just human beings like the rest of us. We're all human. Like I'm not sure why a barrier. Well, I guess I know why there's a barrier put there. But yeah, like believe it or not, there's actually human beings that don't smoke and don't do alcohol and don't do drugs and all this stuff. But who's to say what's bad? Like that's just anyway. That's a different topic. But it's just crazy. Like these are. I met so many good people, man. I met so many good people out here with good hearts, and um, looking back, it kind of hurts. I'm not gonna lie, it hurts seeing how good these people are. A lot of these people are, and I look back at my old friends, and I would host a lot of events in like whether it was game tournaments, sports, and so on and so forth for those like for those who weren't the cool kid, for those who and for both for everyone really, and they would come over and do tournaments and we would do like all these events and like these people had looking back my association and even during the time I noticed it but I thought that by associating with them I could help them and so on and so forth but they had really bad habits that I won't go into detail on and they had like things that were just straight up wrong to do as a human being and I told them hey you should definitely not do that but they kept doing it over and over and I'm just like and the way they viewed others turns out like one of the members in that group would actually have like a group chat and they would just gossip and then like they would have like 100+ JWs on that like Discord server and they would just name drop and share information and it was funny because like I had no idea about this and I'm like this is so childish like people when you're born in life you get one chance in life and you have to find truth not like it's like everyone's life is different but don't you want to find truth and find out why we're here and enjoy life and but like it was just toxic the organization was so toxic and I had to get out of that like my old friends were so toxic.
Well, I'm so pleased that you got out of that environment and your life is moving forward positively now, and you seem really happy. So that's great. I mean, leaving the organization always comes at a cost, but that cost doesn't prevent you from being happy in your life going forward, and that is clearly evident in your case.
Thank you. And so one thing that I was just wanted to ask you was like how has it been for you like getting out?
It has been an extremely painful process because so many things happened all at the same time. So my marriage broke down, I lost contact with my kids, I was homeless. All of this happened at the same time, round about the same time as I left the organization. So it was really tough, really tough. And things have gotten better, but it hasn't been a perfectly linear progression. There have been lows and ups and downs, little peaks and troughs, but overall things are getting better for me. And I'm in a great new relationship now with the most amazing woman on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And we're planning a life together. So that's really great. And I've only got positive things to look forward to in the future.
I'm really sorry you went through that. Was and I don't even know what to say that. That's a lot. And we should talk more on that because I feel like I can relate with you in some areas. But yeah, so you are so strong for making it through that, and you're here and you're sharing this information, and it's so isolating thinking sometimes that you're alone in this. And the more people do this, the more we're gonna wake up and understand one another because it's just a lot of people we didn't have this before, right? Like where did you go? Like before apostates were like it's funny because even like there was like this image of like oh these apostates are down the street, you're holding a sign up in front of a Kingdom Hall. Like I've never seen that. Like the way apostates were talked about were like hey yeah there are these guys who have a sign up or they're protesting or they're going to attack you and that's just never happened. I've never seen it personally. And these are just people who are tired of having this chain on them, you know? And what's so crazy is like these men who are in positions of power that affect our lives in the organization, there's no qualifications needed. Zero. You don't have, like, you can literally tell a woman how to raise her kids, and you've never had kids, and you can, like, nothing, no experience, no degrees, no nothing. which, by the way, the organization is so critical on seeking higher education, and yet our lives are saved by people in higher education. It's like, what kind of dynamic is this? And at the end of the day, it's just, we have a platform now. It's 2021 now. All the information can be put out there. We can access it. People can come up with their experiences. Imagine if we could have done this in 1974 and in 1976. Like, can you imagine the amount of YouTube channels that would be talking about how the world was supposed to end and it didn't? Like, the organization would have been over before 2000, before they can make another end of the world prediction. But goodness, I'm so glad we have these platforms now, man. I'm so happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I mean, you make a really good point. If we had this in 1974, 1975, 1976, that would have been game over for Watchtower. Easily game over. I mean, even now, I mean, I don't think every single witness would have left. There's always going to be like a hardcore group who are just so dependent on the organization for anything positive in their life. They will never ever leave, regardless of whether or not it's the truth. My mother is one of those. If it came out tomorrow, if the governing body announced tomorrow, we no longer believe our organization to be the truth, it wouldn't make a difference to her at all, not one little bit. Because she's not in she's not in it for reasons of truth. All of her reasons for being in it are emotional. And so I think that there will always be people like that. I think, at least for the foreseeable future, there will always be Jehovah's Witnesses in some way, shape, or form. But the organization in its current form, I think, has a shelf life. That's not too long in the future. Yeah. But it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, Nate. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to have a chat with me.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure, and man, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so glad we get to talk, and thank you for having me on your channel.
Thank you very much, and thank you, viewers, for watching as well. If you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to the channel with notifications so that you get alerted to all of my new videos. Please proceed to Jexit in an orderly fashion, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you haven't already done so, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like my work and want to help me continue doing it, please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Jexit_2020. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank these very special patrons who make these videos possible.